Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe and fun place to get real and learn about sex. Whether you're a man or woman, single or couple, this is the show for you. I am your host, Kevin Anthony, and I am here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and your relationships. All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 332, and it is titled How to Balance Personal and Sexual Freedom in Long-Term Relationships. So this is a topic that you hear often, right? This idea of like, when I get into a relationship, I lose who I am, or I don't have the freedom to do the things I want to do. And you'll see people often struggle with this idea of like, how do I be in a relationship, give the relationship my all, like really give 100% to it, but also maintain, who I am as a person and still continue to do the things that I like to do or I did before I was in relationship. It can be a tricky balance. So we're going to talk about that in this particular episode. We're going to talk about what that really means. How do we do it? What are some of the challenges? We're going to give you some tools for how to do this more effectively. And I think this could be really, really helpful for people because personally, as a coach, I see a lot of people struggle with this. Personally, I watch my friends struggle with this. And I don't want to get into it now because we'll get into it in the show. But like I always talk about the fact that, when you come into a relationship, you have your each individual entities, and then you have a third entity that's created. That's the relationship. But when the third one is created, it doesn't mean you lose the individuals. And so we're going to talk about that. I'm really excited to have that conversation today. But before we do that, a short word from my sponsor, Power and Mastery 3.0. Power and Mastery 3.0 is the latest version of the popular men's sexual mastery course. If you are struggling with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or simply want to increase your skills in the bedroom, then Power and Mastery is for you. Join the exclusive club of men who have taken their sexual performance into their own hands and become sexual masters. Mastering your sexuality is a key component to becoming the man she has always dreamt of and craves. Don't leave your sexual performance up to chance or the throw of the dice. Become a sexual master today by going to powerandmastery.com and joining the exclusive club of men who have taken their destiny into their own hands. That's powerandmastery.com. Okay, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see that I have a guest with me today. Her name is Ry Duong, and she is a passionate relationship coach, empowering individuals and couples to live authentically and attract lasting love. With a background in social work and coaching, she guides clients on their journey of self-discovery and a life of bliss. Welcome to the show, Ry.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I love being here. I am full of energy. So you're going to see energy just bursting outside of me.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Give all the energy you can to the audience. Awesome. They will love it also. Okay. So in the intro, I kind of talked a little bit about what we'll be talking about today, but I'm wondering if just to start from your own perspective, could you describe a little bit about what we mean when we say balancing personal and sexual freedom in a long-term relationship? Like, what does that really mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of describe it pretty perfectly when you talk about like two individual separately as an entity and then creating that third identity, which is the couple itself. Trying to balance that together is not always easy and it's tricky. There's always a fine line. But I always say, like, just like in my couple, is that I try to maintain my identity because I live true to my authentic self. I am an entity in myself. And that is the reason why my partner fall in love with me. And just like I fall in love with him as he is. And together we build, like, I always say, I like the expression. It was actually somebody else said 1+1 is not 2, 1+1 equals 3. And that's how I like to see it. I mean, the more number I get, the better it is when we're adding each other's up. That's how I like to see it. Is that you're both two full cup, unique in yourself, and then you combine strength and your weaknesses. Because I don't also see like weaknesses as actually a weaknesses, depending on the right context. It could actually be a leverage. So when you combine those two forces together, building this third identity, it should leverage you. It should be like life should be a little bit more easier. You should be able to express yourself. You should be able to have your vulnerability show up and feel safe. So I see that as like maintain you, be authentic within you need to get to know yourself because if you don't know who you are, it's kind of hard. And then combining that together to create this beautiful third identity that is a symbol of the two of you and something else as a couple.
Yeah, I really love that idea of one and one actually equals three and not two.
Yes.
Because really, I mean, this is when people talk about, power couples, you hear people throw this out all the time. They're a power couple or we're a power couple. There's a lot of people who think they're power couples that really aren't power couples, but that's a whole other conversation. But this idea of, when we see a couple and we go, wow, they're a power couple, what we're really commenting on, what we're really seeing is that idea of one and one equals three. In other words, together they are even better and more powerful than they were separate. Right. And,
Hmm.
and I love that part that you brought in also about bringing in your strengths, but also your weaknesses. Because if you're really in an aligned relationship,
Yeah.
you will complement each other, right? So
Hmm.
where you might have a weakness in some area, they might have a strength there and vice versa, right? And so you come together and in that way you end up being exponentially more powerful together than you were
Hmm.
separate.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I love the way that you described that. So of course this begs the question because we're talking about this, right? So this obviously must be a problem for some people.
Yeah.
And the next question is, from your point of view and the work that you do and the clients that you work with,
Hmm.
how big of a problem is this? In other words, how many people struggle with this balance that we're talking about?
Ooh, there's a huge amount of people who struggle with because it's such a fine line. Because sometimes you self-doubt yourself. You're like, well, where does my identity and where do I draw the line in terms of my boundary? Like, this is me, the fact that I need independent time, leisure time, time with my friends and family. To what point is it part of my identity, and what point does the identity of the couple should be involved? So when people navigate that, it's a struggle. Not that it's well, of course, it's always possible for them to actually be able to come up with an agreed consent decision making of what that would look like. But a lot of people struggle. I would say like in my type of work with my clientele, at least minimum 65% of people, if not more, struggle a lot with this because they're kind of like, how much of it is me and how much can I share and express and require that from my partner without feeling like I'm imposing my way on them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree that in the work that I do, I see a significant number of people struggling with this.
Yeah.
And there are obviously a lot of problems, like when you get out of balance like that and you kind of lose yourself in a
Yeah.
relationship, obviously that's difficult in the relationship in and of itself. But the other
Yeah.
thing that I see is that when relationships transition, right, and then
Mhm.
you end up not in that relationship anymore, it's like, I don't even know who I am now, right?
Yeah.
Because their entire identity was that relationship because they let go of that piece of themselves of who they
Mhm.
actually were. And I think that uh, makes leaving a challenging relationship more
Yes.
difficult because of the fear. And it also makes once you are out, like getting back on your feet significantly more difficult
Mhm.
as well.
It's good. Well, you ask yourself, who am I? And like, I always like to share a little part of who I am. I'm pretty raw as it is. I don't really, I share what I share. Like, people see what they understand. But like the last identity that I had, the last relationship that I had it was no longer a line. It was somebody I loved to death. And that's another hard concept to understand, to think that love can conquer it all. I'm like the optimistic kind of girl, and I think love can conquer just about anything as long as like we really fight it and we're gonna be able to make this last. And sometimes love isn't enough. There is a lot more that needs to be compatible, and you need to be able to have respects and admiration for each other, working as a team rather than competing against each other. But I noticed that my identity, because I was trying to mold myself to please my partner so badly, that a part of me started to dissolve in the relationship. And it felt like the end. I took the hard pill of when my partner decided that he wanted to leave. And I didn't agree with the decision, but I swallowed the pill, and I would never ask people to stay with me if they don't want to stay. So I swallowed the pill and granted him his wish to leave, and like had enough self. like belief and faith in myself and trusting myself that I could figure it out. And I realized that if I would have to stay in that relationship, I would have done what I teach all of my clients, which is standing true in your power and being as authentic as you. I would have betrayed all of my value of everything that I've been preaching to my ladies and my men out there, and I couldn't do that. So I decided I'll stay true as hard and painful it is to have the person that you love walk away from you, but I stand true to my value, which is I will never betray who I am, even if it means that I would lose that relationship. So I'm not sure if I'm answering it, but it kind of ties in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You made an excellent point, which is that, I can definitely think of several people offhand from my past that I love dearly, but I cannot be in relationship with, right? So like you can love somebody, right?
Yeah.
And realize that we're not just a fit.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that you said is, love may not necessarily be enough.
Yeah.
You can love somebody, but if you just have very different ways of seeing the world and operating in the world, it's just too many places where you disconnect, then that
Hmm.
doesn't make for a healthy, successful long-term relationship. It doesn't mean that there isn't love there.
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to talk about something else that I see also when it comes to this idea of, balancing.
Yes.
So we talked about just now how some people will lose themselves in
Yeah.
a relationship. And the
Yeah.
point that you were making is that, you've always made it a point to stay really true to yourself, regardless
Yeah.
of, what was happening in the relationship.
Yeah.
But another dynamic I see that's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum there is when people are afraid that they're going to lose themselves and therefore they don't step 100% into the relationship. And so they always feel like they kind of got one foot out, one foot in, right?
Yeah.
And you can feel that when you're in a relationship. And there's a fear there that if they go in
Mm-hmm.
100%, somehow they're going to lose their stuff. And so they always stay a little bit on the
Yeah.
outside, which of course really prevents you from being able to go really deep and really
Hmm.
establish that, that really deep, true intimacy.
Hmm. That connection as well. And that's something from like the wounds and the trauma that they've gone through. And although we can sympathize and kind of understand where that comes from, but I always talk to my clients in terms of if you tell me that you truly want true love, because I'm somebody who is like, I love true love. Like, I want it to be real. Everything is all what I stand for. My brand is authenticity, fun, and just being crazy, silly, wacky, be yourself. But is that I really want the person to be able to say, if you say you want true love, this is all that you desire at the end of the day, the money that you make, the house that you have, the car, but you only want to come home to the person that see you for who you truly are and you can just let your guard down. If that is truly what you desire, I can understand that you're kind of leaving your foot out of the door just in case as a backup, something might happen, I'm be okay and safe, but you won't be able, like you said, create that depth, that connection that you want. So I asked them, what is the price that you're willing to pay to keep this relationship by always having your foot out the door? At some point, they're going to have to come to a decision. And there are many people who will never come to that decision of being able to commit and take that leap of faith and trusting. But if you want true love and if you truly want what you say you truly want, you need to be able to open up that heart. And then I look at myself when I had my 17 years marriage that I filed for divorce. I didn't believe in love anymore. After everything that's gone through, it was my first boyfriend. It became my husband. So this is all I ever knew. I thought, traditional, like I'd be married to one man and one man forever, and that's all I really want. Uh, but from coming out of that relationship, the hurt was so painful that my heart wanted just to close. But I knew that I believe in true love. And if I was to find my true love, and if I was to make this really truly work, I gotta open up my heart and just like Jay Shetty said, the more you learn, the more you feel, the bigger your heart you're supposed to open. And that's how you actually find true love and be able to expand from love as a romantic partner to being able to give it to your kids, to your colleagues, to the world. It has to expand, not contract. So
Yes, absolutely. That is so true and so important. And you were very accurate in what you said is that, a lot of people have been hurt in the past, they've been traumatized, and their response to that is to shut down.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's what we would call a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? In other
Mhm.
words, you got hurt in a relationship, therefore you shut your heart down. You shut it down, which means you're not opening it up to really go there to the depths that we're talking about and create true intimacy. And therefore your relationships fail, you get hurt again, right? And then you end up in this sort of never ending cycle of failed relationships because you're not really opening up to what that relationship could potentially be. So but it's, at the same time, I have some compassion because I understand, like, nobody likes to get hurt in relationships. It doesn't feel
Absolutely.
good, right? But at the same time, as you said, if you ever really want to experience, you know, I talk on this show a lot about, like what your relationship could be, or,
Yes.
what your sex could be, like I've done whole episodes on that. And it's like, if you ever want to really experience the
Yeah.
true potential for what's there, the only way to do it is to
Yeah.
open your heart. There is no other way.
Hmm. Hmm. You brought up sex, my favorite topic. Because once you open up your heart, the ability to connect at a such deeper level that no one else can share between you and your partner and sex wise is just beyond. Like, and I say that not, I say it as a joking way, but I say it in truth as well. It's just, it takes you to a whole completely other level to be able to experience the sexual bond between you and your partner. It's undescribable. So yes, open up your heart, expand it. And I wanted to mention this too. It's like it's important. Yes, open your heart, but also take your time to decide and take the time to evaluate the partner that you're going to open your heart to. Because I'm one of those girl who has like who carries my heart in my hand. I'm open sleeve. Like what you see is what you get. But I tend to open my heart to anybody and everybody, and not everybody deserves to be shown your heart. So pick wisely. And when you're able to pick the right type of partner, your wound, you're scared, and all of these different things, they just make it somehow so much more easier for you to open up and to trust them. And I say that as an example, with my current partner. I used to love all of my different partner and I give every part of me. I'm a very deep lover, but I could never fully take away, remove the need for control. Kind of like what you said, the one foot out of the door. There was a part of me where I love my independence, I love my freedom. So I didn't want to give that up completely. And so I've never always let all of these different partner in where they can fully kind of just take me in and like would let my guard, let them be able to influence me in a certain way. This is the first time in this relationship that I have because I took my time. I actually took the time to assess and see if we're compatible, getting to know him, slowing down my rhythm because I'm like the one, like, I know that you're the one for me. And I'm like, let's jump in. Let's not waste any time. I get that's how I work. But I realized in love, for me anyway, after taking many time of therapies and reflection, I realized for me, I need to slow down because I have a very empathetic heart. I'm an open book. I need to assess the person that is the right fit for me. So, with my current partner, it's just I open up to him easily, and I'm able. For the first time, I said to him, "It's easy for me to be in my feminine energy with you, with a masculine, because you just makes me feel safe. I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to argue whether I'm right or wrong. You are right. If you make sense and it's rational, I don't need to defend myself. So, yes."
Well, you made a very good point about choosing wisely, right?
Yes.
So you do want to choose wisely. You do want to only really open your hearts to people that, are quality people. And that, of course, will reduce the chances that you get hurt. So that is definitely a wise thing to do. And at the same time, just be careful that you're not using that as an excuse to never open up your heart.
Exactly.
Well, I'm
Exactly.
just really picky. I hear this a lot from women. I'm just really picky and no man can ever, meet my
Mhm.
needs or blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, no, what's really happening there is you're shut down, you're closed off, you won't let anybody in, and you're using that as an excuse. It's always there. It's always something wrong with the man. It's never anything wrong with you. So,
Mhm.
you know, yes, absolutely be discerning and slow down is great advice too. This is something I'm telling people all the time. that they meet somebody and that chemistry gets flowing, right? And they're just like, oh yeah, this is the one, and boom, they just want to jump right in. And
Yeah.
I understand that urge or that desire when it really feels right. And
Hmm.
at the same time, we have to be aware that the chemicals play tricks on us, right? And so if it truly is the right person, and this really is that person that you're going to, dive in with, go deep, spend a lifetime with, they will be perfectly okay if you go slow.
Hmm.
In other words, they're not going to be like, "Oh, that forget it. This is just too slow for me. I'm out of here." Like that's not going to happen if it really is the right person. So there's no penalty to
Hmm.
slowing down and taking the time to get to know each other.
Yeah.
You can only benefit by doing that.
And there's a beautiful quote too. You can never say the wrong thing to the right person. So, like, I used to overanalyze thing a lot. Like, oh, I would have to do this if I'm in. Then I'm like, screw this shit. It's like this is way too complicated. And you're not being real because you're becoming somebody that you think would please that person. And ever since I stopped doing that, I'm just showing up as the real me. This is who I am. This is like, of course, at the beginning, you can't just like come and like, this is me, take it as it doesn't work either. That's just way too much. But be as real as you can possibly be. And over time, they start to discover you. But when you show up as you and you're being real, it doesn't feel like work. You don't have to convince them to fall in love with you because they're already falling in love with who you are. And that person that is falling in love with you, they see you for your true person and not the person. Well, of course, we have different image of people and ideals that we have, but when you show up as real as much as possible, it is much more easier to build a much deeper connection.
Yeah, and the key to that is, when you say you can never say the wrong thing to the right
Mhm.
person. I mean, the key to that really is, authenticity and
Yes.
compassion, right?
Yeah.
So if you're truly being yourself and being honest and sincere, and you're
Yeah.
doing it with compassion, then yeah, you can't say the wrong thing to the right
Hmm.
person. But you have to be genuine, and
Yeah.
you have to exercise some judgment and some and employ some compassion in the things that you say.
Use a little bit of that logical sense. Like one of the things that I always tell people is that people literally just follow word by word what you say. Well, no, use your own judgment in what we're saying. We're trying to give you as much as we can, but you know yourself pretty good. You have your inside history, you know how you work and all that, and just use your own logic, make it into your own flavor. That is the right key ingredient. Is like literally, I have some client, like I tell them literally this, and they're like, I follow it by the book, it doesn't work. Well, you have, you have to put it in context and you got to use some judgment to make it possible so that it makes it workable for you as well. So don't just listen to the podcast and literally take that. It helps you, but use some logic in there and put your own flavor. Don't be shy to put your personality and your flavor into that as well.
Hmm. So, I love this conversation so far because, what we're our primary topic here, of course, is balancing, personal and sexual freedom in a relationship. But there's so much more of just generally great relationship advice that's coming through as we talk about these things. So
Yeah.
this is awesome. Um, and having said that, I want to kind of bring us back a little bit more
Hmm.
towards the balancing part.
Yes.
We've kind of touched on this throughout the conversation so far, but I want to make a point to say it more clearly and straightforward, which is the question is, why is it important to do this balance? What would be some of the benefits if people could learn to have this balance?
Because then you're not navigating in the confusion of the unknown or the, did he say this? Did he mean this? It's like it's clarity, like you're doing this balancing act because you want to be able to say, babe, like that's how I have my conversation with my client is like, don't be shy to bring up concerns that you may have. Don't be shy to share some of the fear. Don't overwhelm them with those things and make sure that you pick the right timing to share for sure, and know your partner as well, because it's a matter of knowing and being compassionate, like you said, with your partner. I wouldn't just bring up any random topic to my partner if he's exhausted and he's overwhelmed with the kids. Like this is might not be the right timing, but by showing up and expressing what is important for me and drawing that line for him, it allows him to say, I know how to love you better. Like I tell my partner, I like, if for forever, for the rest of your life, you pay attention to little details that you do for me every single day, I will be forever yours. You don't have to do nothing else. And he said to me, if you give me blowjob every single day for the rest of our life, I am forever yours.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I said, deal. Okay, it's deal. It just allows us to be truly ourselves and like explaining our roadmap of how to love us better. Like he tells me how I can love him better, and I tell him what is the pointer. Like when I'm tired, when I'm sad, this is what I look like, and this is how you can come and respond to me. Like today, I'm gonna be real and be very. Today, I cried for 2 hours before coming onto your show, Kevin. I was having a really hard time with my ex-husband trying to navigate teenage age for my daughter, and so I kind of felt like very powerless in the situation. So I cried for 2 hours, like, oh my God, on the day where I'm supposed to appear on Kevin's show, I'm gonna have puppy eye. But I never see challenge as something bad. I see as like what is the opportunity to learn behind that. And I share this with all of the audience because we have beautiful lives, but we also have challenges and it's okay. And it's to be able to say, it is what it is. What do I do within the control that I have? And it's the same thing with your partner. If you don't let your partner in and if you don't let your partner know what's happening, like so I let my partner know. I text him. I just want to give you a heads up, babe. When you come home tonight, all I want to do is I'm not going to talk a whole lot. I just want hugs and kisses. This is what I went through today. And I just need you to feel like to show me love. And that's it. When you're able to be clear and obvious to him and let him know, like, how can I best love you? How can I best serve you? It makes everybody's job so much more easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the short answer to the question is you will see that your relationships improve, that they function more smoothly, that you have less arguments or
Yeah.
disagreements, that it builds more trust,
Yeah.
right? When you can see that the person is balanced, right? So like for instance, if we were talking about that one scenario where somebody kind of has one foot in, one foot out,
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
whether or not the other partner consciously recognizes that, they
Mhm.
energetically feel that. And so
Yeah.
there's always a little level of sort of distrust there, right? Of like,
Yes.
which of course then breeds some fear, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the fear is, oh, he might do this or she might do that or what. So it does create, even if it's underneath the surface, even if it's a more subtle layer, it does create some disharmony in the relationship. And once you can bring it back into balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can help, as you said, each other learn how best to serve each other and love each other, all of a sudden everything gets smoother and there's so much more harmony in your relationship. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely worth working on that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to add something quickly, if I may, Kevin, into that. It was in relationship when you are sharing these vulnerable side of you, like what you're doing is like you said, it's the unsaid between relationship that further grows the gap bigger and bigger. And that's what I notice in couple is the thing that they don't say to each other. And somebody on a podcast was saying it. It's so funny. Forgot his name. He said, for years on years, every time he see his wife put on this cap after she showered before bedtime, he thought that that meant that there was no like sex, no bonding at the end of the day. Don't come and approach her at all when all she wants was to be approached by her husband, right? But it's the none said communication between the two and the further the gap. And they gone by like this for 8 years. And she's like, no, I came out of the shower. It's just something I did. It was not to kind of reject you or push you away in any way. But what I'm saying is that even though you don't say, and it's the energy like Kevin felt, like said, that can be felt, it's important to bring it up. And so that trust can be there. And so for me, it's a practice. Like whenever I feel like there's something that needs to be said, I just bring it up and I double check. I don't assume because that is the worst thing to do or assume bad intention from my partner, which we don't have. That is the one rule that we have in our relationship is that even though we're disagreeing or arguing, I always remember this is the man I love more than anything in the world, and nothing else will come and take that down. So I would have to take breather. We would separate. individually, recuperate, come back, discuss about it, close it, move on. We don't bring back the past.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, I need to take a short break because we're about halfway through the show.
Yeah.
But when we come back, I want to talk about, so we're talking about this idea of balance, and people may be asking themselves the question, well, how do I know if I'm in balance? How do I know
Mm,
if my relationship is in balance or not? So I want to talk a little bit about some of the types of problems that you're likely to see in a relationship that's out of balance so that
mhm.
people can maybe recognize if they're having a challenge in
Yeah.
that area. And then I really want to talk about ways that people can get in balance if they're not. So I want to give them some
Mhm.
actionable strategies for how to really get into balance in their relationship. I got a bunch more questions, but those are the two main things I want to get to on the other side of this break. Okay, are you a couple? Are your relationship and sex life where you want them to be? Are there changes you would like to make, but just don't know how? Maybe you think there is nothing that can be done. If you are not 100% happy with where your relationship or sex life is, then get help today and change your life. Go to kevinandceline.com/sex coaching couples. Don't worry about the long link. It's in the description. Just click on it. Schedule a strategy call with me today so we can map out a strategy to get you where you want to be so you can have it all your way. Go to kevinandceline.com/sex coaching couples and book your strategy call today. Is very obviously my couples coaching program. So, if you're listening to any of this and you're like, yeah, I'm really out of balance. I need help. That's where you go. And of course, at the end, I am going to give Ry an opportunity to share how you can get in touch with her because she's doing amazing work also. And if you resonate with her and she's somebody that you would like to work with, I highly encourage you to do so. So, okay, let's get back to this idea of balance. What
Mhm.
types of problems do you often see with couples who are out of balance? Like, how does being out of balance manifest? What are ways that people could
Mm.
go, oh, yeah, we have that pattern or that thing happens for us that would help them recognize whether or not they're in balance?
Well, a lot of time is like the not trusting is like not trusting the intent of their partner or like building up resentment. They don't share their feeling and then all of a sudden they explode. Or it's just like every time they're trying to come together and communicate, there is one person who's trying to communicate, the other person is being on the defensive. So they're out of balance as you start seeing these patterns, or one who just like, I'm not gonna bring it up, these concern, like my partner, if I open up, they'll like, there'll be like a bad reaction from them. So therefore, like I just better be quiet because all I want to do is buy peace and just keep it like I'm comfortable here. But you're off balance when you do that because what you're not saying and what you're tolerating is just going to get worse and worse over time. And this relationship will eventually dissolve itself at some point or another. But you can't keep that unrealness in that couple, and this little monster underneath of the carpet just gets bigger and bigger. So you need to be able to bridge that gap and close it down, right? So that's what I tell my client is that you have to start with small little thing, and it takes patience in your relationship because just asking for change for yourself is hard enough. Imagine asking change from your partner. So you need to have a lot of forgiveness, a lot of compassion. And one of the biggest thing that I tell my client is like treat your partner as though they're your best friend with your best friend, even though, sometimes they don't always deliver on the promise. They're late and they forget stuff. What do? You just go, ah, that's my friend. Like, right? It's unfortunate. You explain it and you kind of let it go, and the relationship resumes itself, and there's love and there's respect. But somehow, when it comes to your relationship, your romantic relationship, there's like this unrealistic standard. Like they're supposed to be superhuman. They're supposed to fulfill my every need. Like all of these things that I have insecurity, a hole that I need to fill. They have to do it all. No, unfortunately, they cannot do it all for you. You gotta show up with the best version of who you are while he's working on him. So the two of you guys can be at a good, healthy place together sharing this. So I don't know if that kind of helped, but definitely if you're seeking like in the relationship, you're feeling like I can't share myself. I can't voice my concern. I can't speak freely. Communication, there's a breakdown. There's resentment. There's like competition. It's assuming bad intent is like you're expressing yourself. The person jumps into conclusion because they're working on autopilot. You guys been together for so long. Well, that's what you would do. Well, no, that's not what she did this time, or that's not what he did this time. He's trying to explain it to you. Can you just listen, you know? So
Yeah, I
there's,
think all of those are great. And that's exactly what I want. I wanted people to hear, kind of behavior patterns that will tend to show up when something feels out of balance. And one of the ones, we're talking about balancing personal freedom and sexual freedom a lot. And
yeah,
one of the things that you said in there is like you feel like you can't be yourself. If
yeah.
you feel like you can't share all of who you are in your relationship, that's a sign that this relationship, it doesn't have that perfect balance, right?
Hmm.
Another one I would say is if you feel like you don't know who you are because of the relationship. It's like I don't even know who I am anymore. Like all I
Hmm.
know is I'm Mrs. or Mr. whatever. It's like
Hmm.
that would be another sign. In addition to many of the other things that you shared as well. So I just want to talk about that a little bit because it's not always obvious when these
Yes.
things are out of balance.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give people some clues or some tips on how they might recognize that, oh, I do have one foot in, one foot out because of
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, I have kind of lost myself and forgotten who the core of who I am is,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
so if you can recognize that, if you can bring awareness to it, that's the first step to making a change and shifting things and getting more into balance, which of course leads us to what are some of the ways that people can successfully balance their personal freedoms and being in a relationship and doing both really well, not doing like both of them
Hmm.
half-assed, right? Like really owning who you are and being your authentic self while also being 100% in your relationship and giving to that the best way that you can. How do people go about doing that?
I think like one way to do it is like just see yourself like when I was actually my own person before I actually got into a relationship, the leisure that I had, the sports, the activity, the workout that I do, the books that I read, the fact that I love the beach and gardening. Those things are an essence of who you are. That is your identity. So don't, because you have a partner, all of a sudden let go of those things. That's the first thing we tend to do, right? We become so consumed by love and infected by all of these hormones that we cast aside all our friends or family. We forget about them and all of the things that we used to practice, the leisure, the sport that gives us a sense of joy. We just toss it aside because we're so in love with this person, right? So, and that's okay at the beginning, but slowly go back towards your identity. So what I do is like I love my partner, but I'm an individual. I am a person in a full identity of who I am. I still practice my martial art. I go to my kickboxing. I do what I need to do. I do my workout. He's not really a morning person. It takes him a while. I don't mind. I let him do him. I don't want to change who he is. And the one thing that I do before I actually got into this relationship is I ask myself, the person that I am meeting right now, will I be okay 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road if he was to stay the same? I still be in love with this person. So there is only but an upgrade for him to do. He can't fail, right? And so that's one of the things my boyfriend says to me. It's like, I feel like I can't fail you. It's only up going from here. So if you actually are in a relationship and you maintain those quality, go out with your girlfriend. And one of the big mistakes that I did in my past relationship was I kind of cast aside my family, my friends. I just kind of basically hang out with all of his circle, his friend, and as much as I enjoy them, different circles of friend have different connection. Like intellectually, I wasn't connecting with his friend. Purpose-wise, they were not where I was at. I was among friends who were coaches, who were wanting to make a difference, and they were about making money and all these different things. And those are all admirable, and I can appreciate all of that, but that wasn't my circle. So bit by bit, I lose myself in this identity to one day looking at myself in the mirror and not recognizing who I was, staring back at myself. So yes, so maintain your identity, keep the circle, the friends, the connection, the things that you love and let him be him too. Like give him the space to breathe, to be by himself. Men loves their freedom too, and they're afraid to lose their independence and all these different things, but give them that space. Let him do him, you do you, and you're happy to come together. And distance could be such an amazing thing. We have much greater sex when I'm gone for a while. When I disappear for like a week and then I come back, he'd be like, "Baby, I miss you so much." Yes, baby, you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's somewhat interesting because people do tend to do this, right? They get into a
Mhm.
relationship and then all the things that they were doing before on their own, they tend to let go of a lot of them. And what I think is interesting about that is this person was attracted to you from
Yes.
what they saw you doing on the outside, right? So if it
Mhm.
was martial arts, like, your man was, interested in dating you and he's looking at who is this person, right? And he's like, oh wow, she's cool. She does martial arts and she does
Mhm.
this and that,
Mhm.
And then you get into a relationship and suddenly you stop doing those things. And then
Yeah.
you wonder why the attraction isn't there. It's like, well,
Mhm.
a lot of the things that they were attracted to begin with, you're
Mhm.
not doing anymore, right?
Exactly.
So, and people do that too with appearance when they get into
Mhm.
relationships, right? And it's just like they just, oh, I don't need to do that anymore, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but that is an important part of attraction, right? So yeah,
That's it.
keep doing the things that you do, and I think along with that, because sometimes you
Mhm.
you do let's just say that your partner,
Yeah.
I'm using you as an example now, but
Go ahead. You go right ahead.
let's just say that your partner wasn't into martial arts, or maybe thought that, martial arts were somehow bad because you shouldn't be fighting, right? And it's like, well, once we get into relationship, she'll change, once she
Mhm. Mhm.
realizes that I don't really think that's a good thing for a woman to do, she'll stop doing it, kind of thing, right? So let's just say that were the case.
Mhm.
This is one of those things where you made this point earlier, which is, you said, if my partner never changed, would I still love him 20 years from now?
Yeah.
That is an absolute must ask question when you start a relationship, because you cannot date somebody for their potential, who they could be. Or like, women do this all the time. Oh, he'll
Mhm.
change, or I can
Mhm.
change him.
I'm guilty of
He's
that.
he's got most of what I want, but there's a couple of things that I are absolute no's for me. But don't worry, I can change him. No, you can't. No, you can't. And if you're successful at doing it in the short run, it's going to
Mhm.
come back to haunt you in the long run, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
yes, you absolutely have to, one, show up as your authentic self. Keep
Yeah.
doing the things that light you up, that make you who you are, that made you attractive to that person to begin
Mhm.
with.
Mhm.
And then also, of course, accept your partner for who
Mhm.
they are,
Yeah.
and all the things that they do. And I would say, even take it a step further, which is encourage your partner to
Mhm.
do the things that they love. You mentioned, that you had let go of your circle of friends.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always tried to do in every relationship I've ever had was make sure that my partner still had her connection to friends,
Mhm.
family, whatever. Like, it was great to go out and do girl nights. My wife used to go out and do girl nights with a couple other women in the community that were also doing kind of similar work. And I thought it was amazing because I learned
Mhm.
very early on, when I was very young, I had a girlfriend who just dove in with me completely, and just her whole life disappeared and I became her whole life. And for a
Mhm.
little while, that feels great,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You're like, wow, I'm her whole life. This is
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah.
right? And until you see the problems that will
Yeah,
inevitably show up in that
yeah.
situation. And it's not a healthy balance. No, I
Mhm.
shouldn't be anybody's entire life. No matter
Mhm.
how much they love me, and no matter how much I want them to love me, they need to have their own aspects to life too. Otherwise, you're going to end up in an unhealthy dynamic. So
Mhm.
uh, some ways to do that, of course, is to, when you start dating and you get into a relationship, is have these types of conversations, and
Mhm.
set those boundaries. You might say something like, hey, I really love martial arts. I've been doing it for 20 years. I
Mhm.
train twice a week in the dojo, and that's not going to change. So hopefully you're okay with that. But just know that this is something that lights me up. This is something that allows me to show up as a better person in the relationship. This is something that gives me confidence in the world, like all that kind of stuff. Like, let them know why. Don't just say, well, that's just what I do and like it or leave it, right? Like, let
Yeah.
them know that why this is important to you and just have those conversations. It's like
Mhm.
the shower cap thing that you were talking about
Yeah.
before. It's like
Yeah.
people make up all these ideas in their head. Like, well, I thought once we got together that she'd stop going to the dojo because that takes too much time away from us. And if she's still going, that must mean she doesn't really care about me, right?
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
not what it means at all, right? But if you never stop to have that conversation, you don't know
That's right.
that,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, those are some things that you can do. And I would say also it is a balance, right? If you were, like when I was training martial arts, like a lot, I was in the
Mhm.
dojo 3 days a week.
Mhm.
That's a lot of time. And I mean, it would be after work. It would be I wouldn't get home till 9:30, 10 o'clock at
Mhm.
night.
Yeah.
That'd be 2 days during the week, and then Saturday mornings, like half a
Mhm.
Saturday, right? So it was a big commitment. And if you really want to have the balance, like we're talking about balance, so that means you got to find the balance, and that means maybe you drop off a day at the dojo and you pick up a day spent with somebody that you love, right? So it's you don't drop the things that you're doing. You have good conversations, you set boundaries, you let them know why these things are important to you, and then you find a way to make it work within the context of your
Yeah.
relationship.
And you are so right, Kevin. Having these conversations, what I did was I did like I made it fun, like because everything around my brand is fun, but all in my life too. Life is too short to be too serious about everything. So I don't take everything too seriously. I just like to be silly, and that's what you see a little bit of me. You don't get to see the full version of me yet, but this is part of me, and I just don't take things way too seriously because I love life. I love everything. I love the connection. I'm grateful for everything that I have. And one of the thing I did is we had early on conversation of what was important for me. Like, listen, I've gone through, I've done these relationship thing. This is what I'm looking for. And I don't like set like a fixed thing. I'm very flexible within like my standards and stuff. But I talk about like what's important for me, what it is, like my kids. Like I want someone to come into my life. I don't want them to be the father of my kid, but I want them to be their friends who's cheering, who's supportive of me, not criticizing about how I parent my kids and all of that stuff, but be complimentary. So we would do a quiz, how much time do I spend on the phone? What time is a reasonable cutoff time to put your phone down? Like, and in terms of sex, how many time is an amount of sex is sufficient for you? And what can we explore? What can we try? At what extent are you able to? So we have these beautiful conversation, but I have to say, like, I don't know, I'm super lucky. I just have the most beautiful conversation with my boyfriend, which wasn't the case in my past relationship, in my two past relationship. But the conversation just flow. And every time, because I've been pre-programmed to receive chaos, and then I have like these amazing conversation with my current boyfriend. I was like, my God, conversation when it's right with the right partner that is showing compassion and understanding, it could be solved like in less than 5 minutes. It's like, this is weird. This I can get used to. So, because you're so attracted to dysfunction and all these things, but as you get older, you get wiser, you look for peace. And that's what I have in my relationship. Peace doesn't mean boredom. It's like I have a sense of peace within myself, within the relationship, and my relationship is just is beautiful, full of dynamic and enthusiasm and stuff. It won't be always fiery every single time like when I'm younger, that was chaotic, but it's beautiful. It has its firework and it has most of all a sense of peace and calm, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because people do get addicted to the drama,
Yeah.
right? Of that chaos that
Mm,
happens.
mm,
And you'll see that often. I mean, we could do a whole show just on this topic alone, but how many times I've seen people get into a new relationship, one that
mm,
is actually really good for them, and think,
mm,
nah, I don't know, it's just not that good. I don't
yeah.
know, there's something I'm not that attracted to him or her. And when you
Mm,
really dig down into it, what you find out is they think that this isn't the right person and they don't feel attracted to them because they're not experiencing the chaos, the crazy highs, crazy lows, blah, blah, blah stuff that's happening. They think that is what makes like, a good relationship. Not so much that they think it makes a good relationship, but like that to them is attraction, right? When it's really just addiction to chaos and drama. And I agree. Peace is not boring to me at all. And the older I get, the more peace I want.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you right in.
uh-huh. So another thing that you were mentioning there is definitely something that I wanted to get into here, since we only have a few minutes left on the show. This idea of balancing the sexual freedom part, because this is something that you see a lot in relationships, which is like, well, I want to be able to do this, that, or the other thing, but she won't let me, he won't let me, they don't want it, they're not into it. Like, how does one go about balancing, their sexual desires in a relationship?
Hey, I think like it's bringing it in a gentle way to your partner, like, hey, babe, like, for example, like I wanted to try something new. Like I like to explore tantric sex and all of these different things and like evolve and all of it. Like I have a very curious mind. I'm always learning. So I'm like, and I want to be able to bring it in a way that is very loving. But there's a level of trust already there that I built, that I've proven in my relationship. So it's safe for me to bring it up. But I look for the right timing to bring it up when we're cuddling, where, he's in a good mood. I gave him his blowjob, so, so he's all mine. So the rest is I'm kidding, but I mean, like, in a mood, like you can have like a beautiful kind of night out, like going to the restaurant and you're talking and you're loving and you're connecting and you say, babe, I really want to explore this. I heard about tantric sex and I'm really curious. I wanted to bring us to a much deeper and I wanted to see where you're coming from. Just kind of drop a little teaser, see where he's at, assess, your partner and just explore it together. And when you guys are able to establish, okay, what should we do? It becomes like a project as a team, not like you imposing a project on him or like this is my way or the highway, like you said. So when you open it up from a space of love and your energy has to carry it too. Like if you're coming like with an anxiety, which like it looks like there's manipulation behind it, your partner is going to sense all of that too, right? So I make sure that I'm aligned in terms of energy wise, my intention, and I go into it without fear. And I'm coming from a space very gentle. I'm just like kind of, hey, babe, this is what I'm thinking. I'm wanting to explore, wanted to discuss this a little bit more. And you go with the rhythm of your partner and be patient, like as you're going through that process.
Yeah, maybe we need to have you come back and have a master class on blowjobs. Sounds like your man is very satisfied in that area.
Yes, it's a very satisfied, happy man. I was just teasing him. I was like, I should create a master class of giving blowjobs.
You should. There's demand for it out there. I'm telling you. If you create one, I'll help you promote it.
Deal. That's a deal, Kevin. I love that.
all joking aside, actually, I'm not even joking. That aside, I think what you were saying is it really starts with a couple of things, which is one, really good conversations, and I love the way that you shared like how you bring it up, right? Unfortunately, sometimes when people feel frustrated because their sexual needs aren't being met, they come up, they bring it up with a way of, why don't you ever do this? Or how come you never do this? Or I wish you would do that, right? Which comes across really as blaming and makes the other person feel bad, shuts them down and makes them less likely to actually do the things that you're hoping they will do. So I like the way that you said that, like you wait till he's in a good mood, he's happy, you bring it up lovingly, right? And you go from there. And I love that part that you shared too about just being open to experiment. This is something I am a huge proponent of. It's just like, my wife and I used to say, we will try anything once. And if we don't like it, we don't have to do it again. if it fails spectacularly, we will laugh about it,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
try this position and we end up falling off the whatever, it's just like
We've
that
done that
didn't work.
before. Yeah. Bought these strap on and like we bought these strap and they're like it looks so good in the picture like your partner like it's just funny like your my partner was supposed to hold on. I was like that looks really interesting, so we tried it on. I was like awkwardly positioned. He's like this takes a lot more muscle than what I've been going to the gym for. But we laughed about it. So what I'm saying is that when you're exploring, you're experimenting, you're learning it together, you're laughing and you're taking it lightly, it creates a bond to be remembered in your couple and only the two of you guys share it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's important too that when your partner's sharing something with you, when it comes to a sexual desire or need that they have, is to not overreact to it, right? Because it might be something that you're just like, oh no, right? But the problem is when you have that reaction, like, like no, 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 or oh, how could you? That's disgusting, or whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? You're automatically creating disconnect in the
Yes.
relationship. You're automatically taking it out of balance, right? So
Mhm.
you're not having that sexual freedom balanced anymore because you're shutting down one of the partners in the relationship. So
Mhm.
just staying it's really working on that idea that you shared of just being open, right? Be
Yes.
open to it. Don't compromise if you're an absolute no to something, right? You don't have to compromise your boundaries, but just be open-minded. Don't overreact when somebody shares something that they want to do or that they like or that they don't like.
Mhm.
And then, in extreme circumstances where somebody has a real need that you're just an absolute no to, right? Then you can have mature conversations about how they might be able to get that need met outside of the context of what your agreements are, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes that works and sometimes it's not a good idea. You'll have to
Mhm.
assess in your particular situation. But when we're talking about how do you balance your sexual freedom, like,
Yeah.
I want to have sex 5 times a week, and my partner's like,
Mhm.
once is about all I can handle, right? So then it's like, what do you do? How do I
Be
balance
so
that?
sad right now. Once a week. I'm gonna crawl into a ball.
Well, that you start with a good conversation, right? because
Absolutely.
because your partner's like,
Hmm.
I only want once a week, and you're
Hmm.
like, well, forget it, that's it. But if you have a conversation, you might find out the reason they want only once a
Yeah.
week is because they're stressed, because they're
Hmm.
overworked, because they got too much going on. And you go, oh, I didn't realize that. Let me figure out some ways to remove some of that stress. Now suddenly you're more open to it, right? Or the partner on the other side who's like, I want sex 5 times a week. And you're like, this is insane. How could you want to do have sex 5 times a week? If you have those conversations, you might
Yeah.
find out that for them, sex is how they feel connected and loved, right?
Hmm.
And then maybe you realize, oh, what if we could meet that need for connection and love in another way that doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
have to mean sex, right? So,
Hmm.
there's lots of different ways that you could potentially bring that back into balance, but a lot of it starts with having those conversations and that openness that you talked about, to openness to talk about it, and then openness to try different things and find different ways to get your needs met so that you can bring it into balance. And there are some occasions where it's just like, hey, I'm absolutely not going to do that act. And the other person's like, I don't think I can live the rest of my life without ever having that act, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
well, how can we make that work? How can we balance that need? And
Hmm.
sometimes there are ways to do that. I had an email from a couple. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't want to give too many details about it because,
Hmm.
obviously it's a confidential
Hmm.
email, but it's a couple, and the man has a need for something in sex that he hasn't had in many years, and she's had some health challenges, and so she can't fulfill that need anymore. They've been
Hmm.
together for a long time, and so they're literally in that conversation of, we love each other. I want him to have his need met, but I literally can't physically do it.
Hmm.
So, I'm open to ideas, And there's some fear around that. So how do we navigate that? But just that idea that they're at least open to it and trying to figure out how to negotiate that. So
Yeah. And I think like coming from a place of love and compassion, like I look at because I love people who's been married. Like I said, I'm fascinated by love. I love love. And I don't say that just out of the blue like that because I am. But every time I am with my partner, I say a loving way is to love your partner, to truly love them completely, is to show forgiveness and understanding and patience. And so when my partner is coming to me, I actually had to practice my face of like, like, no, it's okay for you to practice it because it's fine because your body reacts pre-program other context situation that you've dealt with, so your body responds to the way it responds, but you can gauge and work at it. So I actually become really good. I like something that's coming new and shocking, so I've learned because I look in the mirror and I practice it, so I have like a much more welcoming reaction because I want my partner to feel safe, to open up, and there's no space for judgment. Like we already have enough judgment as soon as our foot is out the door from all these different opinions. I don't want my partner to come in where he feels judged too. I want him to come home, feel loved and embraced. And the same thing for me. So what I do for him, he does for me. So same thing, just open up and just show a lot of loves and compassion to your partner. And sometimes you can say stories in your head, I want to choke him and stuff. But after that's done, after that's done, you come back to yourself and you show that beautiful side of who you are. I'm not saying that we're always perfect all the time. It's normal to be human, to have certain reaction, but as much as possible, just create a space that is welcoming and that is loving. That's it.
absolutely. Well, Ry, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and wisdom on the show. And please let the audience know where they can find out more about you and if they're interested in working with you, how they can do that.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I wanted to, you can actually reach me at Eternal Love 43 on Instagram. You can follow, there's a whole bunch of tips on relationship I cover from everything. And I also have my YouTube as well that you can actually check out as well of all these different interviews that I have. And you can connect like as people if you want a love assessment to see where you're at, if you're heading in the right directions and you have questions for the holidays, please reach out like calendlylink.com/leader for true love. You can book for a 30-minute free discovery of like a 30 minutes discussion, and I'll help you the best I can if I can help you at all.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It was such a pleasure. I appreciate it. I had a good laugh. So that's my therapy for the day.
Awesome.
Bye, Kevin, and bye, everyone.
All right, everybody. That's all the time I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. I hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. And for more free exclusive content, join me in the Passion Vault at kevinandceline.com/vault. That's kevinandceline.com/vault. Thanks for listening, and remember, as Celine used to say, you're amazing.